Oh, good.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear? You can when I turn the mic on. The Senate Committee on Nominations will come to order. The clerk will please call the roll.
Chair Campbell.
Here.
Vice Chair Sparks.
Here.
Senator Alvarado. Senator Eckhart.
Here.
Senator Hughes.
Here.
Senator LaMantia.
Present.
Senator Miles.
Here.
Senator Paxton. Senator Springer.
Here.
How many present? There being 7 present, a quorum is established. Members, I'd like to welcome you to the Nominations Committee for the 88th Legislative Session. I'm grateful to the Lieutenant Governor for the opportunity to continue to serve as Chair of Nominations. Hope everyone is doing well this morning, and it's time to get to work. We've got an important task before us that involves making sure that the people who are nominated for the positions to serve in the state government are best suited and well qualified for that position. I look forward to working with each and every one of you, as well as guest senators and all of our members as we move through this process. I'm obligated to a work group that actually starts at 1, and so while giving adequate time for vetting, I want us to make sure we move at a good clip and not get hung up on any one specific thing. As many of you know, there are multiple committees running simultaneously, so I know we'll have members coming in and out. It's my pleasure to introduce Vice Chair Senator Sparks and other members of the committee. Senators Alvarado, Eckhart, Hughes, LaMantia, Miles, Paxton, and Springer. Members, if you would like to introduce your staff and any opening remarks, the chair recognizes Senator Sparks to start. Vice Chair Sparks.
Thank you. I'm honored to serve in this position. As you guys know, if we don't have quality folks involved in the process, then we can't expect the right outcomes. So anxious to learn a little more about all of this process, but excited to be here. Would like to introduce my Chief of Staff who will be serving. This is Mike Garcia. I've really been blessed just overall with my staff so far. As you guys know, I'm new and so really excited to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Miles.
Thank you, Chairman Campbell. Looking forward to serving with you in the session. This is my 4th session on this committee. I'm sad to be on this particular session. We're a young man by the name of Ernie Perez, Ernie from San Juan, Valley, just graduated.
Just turn it off, or just leave it, I guess.
I want you to know, instead of this young man completed a 4-year degree program in 2.5 years.
Wow, very impressive.
And I look forward to having assistance with this.
Thank you, Senator Miles. Thank you, young man. Senator Paxton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to return to the Nominations Committee and serve again, making a difference for these positions in our state and serving as the Senate confirmation for these. I would like to introduce 2 members of my staff. First of all, Della Bryant, who I think is in the audience somewhere. There she is. She is my Deputy Chief of Staff, also my District Director, but travels to Austin with me to help on a lot of things. This is her 3rd session with me. She graduated from Abilene Christian, legal assistant from Tulsa, and a proud Aggie mom like me. Trinity Smith is right behind me. She's a former intern in the House. Staffed the Governor's Budget and Policy Division. She is now attending UT Austin and majoring in Government and Rhetoric and Writing, and a current TCCRI Clements Scholar.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Paxton. Senator Springer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just look forward to working with you and serving another term on nominations.
Thank you very much. Senator Hughes, Chairman Hughes.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you. Good to be back on this committee, and you lead it and run it well. Everybody knows it. That's why you continue to be placed there with that responsibility. I'm so pleased to be joined by Olivia Alexander from our team, who's already done work at the federal level, even at her young age. At the federal level, involved on a grassroots level and a lot of things that are important to us. Originally a Houston native, and she's with us. This committee, she's become an indispensable part of our team very quickly. You'll be seeing her a lot.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Hughes. Senator Lamantia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my honor and privilege to be with you all here this morning, and assisting me with nominations is my staffer, Christopher Livaday. He's a political science student at Texas A&M College Station, and this is his second session working in the Senate. And I and my whole staff are grateful for the work he's done and are glad to have him on our team.
Thank you, Senator Lamantia. Senator Eckhart, a returning member. Thank you.
I am
Morning.
so excited to be working with you, and also excited to continue to work with Laura Gonzalez, who is on my staff, and she'll be helping me out. She's awesome.
Excellent. I do see in our audience today, we have our land commissioner who previously warmed up this chair, so welcome. Let's see, serving as nominations committee director is Robert Haley. He's been with the nominations office for 20 years and hadn't been fired yet. That's awesome. We also have Brandon Guyton. He's a veteran from the Army, and he is our clerk. Let's see, first order of business is adopting the committee rules. Earlier, I believe everybody received a copy of our proposed committee rules. Thank you for reading them in advance. Do I have a motion to adopt those committee rules? Senator Springer makes a motion. The committee rules are, is there any objection? If not, the committee rules are adopted. These proceedings are being recorded, so please silence your cell phones, as it is a distraction. For those wishing to offer testimony before the committee today, please fill out a witness card, which can be found on the table in the back, and bring it up to the messengers. Messengers, hold your hand up. One messenger. Bring it up to the messenger, and you'll bring it up to our clerk, please. Before we hear from the nominees who were actually invited to appear, I'd like to recognize guest senators to introduce their constituents to the committee. Each senator, I doubt that you need it, but no more than maybe 2 minutes will be given for introductions. And nominees, you'll have 2 minutes for any opening comments. Public testimony will be taken at the end after all the nominees have appeared before us, and you too will be limited to 2 minutes. At this time, I guess Senator Hancock, you might have been here first. The chair recognizes Senator Hancock to introduce Director George Kanata. And you know what, Senator Hancock, I may just have you stand in, because we're going to, after everyone gets introduced, so you can come up and stand beside him or sit with him,
Yep.
and then we'll have you go back to your seat.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it, members of the committee. It is my privilege to introduce George Kanata. He has worked in this area for quite a while. He was a UTA graduate and got his master's for University of Texas at Arlington as well. He worked for the state for many years with Department of Public Services, and so he has brought that expertise to Tarrant County for many years, especially in Tarrant County. He really set the example on how we want to run this agency and how we want things operating when it comes to this office as well. So I just want to introduce him to y'all. Excellent candidate. Appreciate the nomination for that. He has served specifically as the CPS Regional Director, where he's responsible for overseeing family and foster care services, and this is in 81 counties. So has done a great job, and looking for confirmation again.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chairman Hancock. Thank you, Mr. Kanata. We'll call you up in a few minutes. Thank you so much. The chair recognizes Senator Tan Parker to introduce the Secretary of State, Jane Nelson. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, Thank you, Madam Chair and members. It's a tremendous honor for me to be here today to support the nomination of my friend and constituent and colleague, Senator Jane Nelson, to the position of Texas Secretary of State. Senator Nelson was appointed the 115th Texas Secretary of State by Governor Abbott on January 5th, 2023. The first woman in Texas legislative history to chair a standing budget writing committee, Senator Nelson was chair of the Senate Finance Committee for 4 sessions, and she was a member of the Senate State Affairs Committee, which oversaw election policy for 8 sessions. In addition to writing 4 balanced state budgets, which we all know is an amazing accomplishment, Senator Nelson has a long list of additional accomplishments, including creating CPRIT, reforming medical liability, achieving tax relief, overhauling the foster care system, expanding access to mental health care, and passing over 30 bills to protect victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Members, I am very certain that Senator Nelson has a deep understanding of the complex issues surrounding voting and elections in Texas. She's been a strong advocate for fair and transparent elections, and I believe that she'll work tirelessly on all our behalf to ensure that all Texans have access to the ballot box. Senator Nelson's experience, her leadership, her commitment to public service make her an excellent choice for Texas Secretary of State. I urge this committee to move her nomination forward and look forward to supporting her full confirmation before the Senate as a whole. Thank you, Madam Chair and members, for your time, and I couldn't be more excited about this opportunity for Texas than to move forward this nomination for Senator Jane Nelson.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Thank you, Secretary Nelson. I agree with you. Have a seat, and we will call you, ma'am, in just a few minutes. I see Senator Johnson is here. Sir, come on up. I would now like to ask Mr. Lawrence Long, nominated for Public Safety Commission, to stand. Well, you are standing. Thank you. And 2 minutes. There's so many committees going on, trying to be efficient here. 2 minutes to introduce Mr. Long.
More than enough, Chair Campbell.
Good morning.
Mr. Long has spent a lot of his life assisting the public in various roles, everything from being a treasurer of a local Turtle Creek Association to serving on the Texas Finance Commission for 6 years and more recently on the Texas Facilities Commission. He's been nominated for an appointment to the Texas State Public Safety Commission. I've asked him hard questions. I've impressed upon him the importance of this role, the difficulty of the role, the turmoil, the importance of the independence of that commission, the importance of his own independence, and his answers have been convincing and reassuring, and it is with great confidence that I introduce him and recommend his nomination to this position.
Thank you very much. That comes in high regard for Senator Johnson. I know he, if he says he asks you hard questions, I know he raked you over the coals. So with that, it sounds like you're already ready to stand for nominations for the scrutiny that we will provide. Thank you, Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Long, if you will just have a seat, we'll call you in a few minutes, sir. Let's see, Senator Kolkhorst would be next. Senator Kolkhorst, I saw her just a few minutes ago on the monitor. She is in another committee hearing. I would like to ask Commissioner of Insurance, Commissioner Cassie Brown, are you here? Please stand. You can stand right where you are. So I will go ahead and introduce you after we do a little furniture moving around here. It is my pleasure to introduce Cassie Brown in place of Senator Kolkhorst, and please understand she is in another committee. Senator Kolkhorst wants to recommend Ms. Brown as Texas Commissioner of Insurance. And there's Senator Kolkhorst, right on time. I got the first sentence out for you. The chair recognizes Senator Kolkhorst to introduce Commissioner Cassie Brown for the Department of Insurance. And what we're doing, Senator Kolkhorst, because there's Chairman Kolkhorst, because there's so many committees going on today, we're limiting introductions to 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and it's great to see everyone in nominations and to start this process. I see friends in the room that are being nominated, so congratulations to all. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, it is my pleasure to introduce my constituent, Cassie Brown, and recommend her to be reappointed as the Texas Commissioner of Insurance. Commissioner Brown proudly lives in Gonzales County in Senate District 18 and has dedicated herself to public service for over 20 years, having previously served in both Governor Bush's and Perry's administrations. Commissioner Brown served as Deputy Commissioner of the Workers' Compensation from 2011 until Governor Abbott appointed her to the Commissioner of Workers' Compensation in 2018. Because of the fantastic job she did at DWC, the governor then appointed her to her current role at TDI in 2021. As Commissioner of Insurance, Commissioner Brown oversees the regulation of the second largest insurance market in the country. That is a huge job. As I'm sure many of your offices have also experienced, she has been wonderful to work with over the years. I'm honored to call her a constituent and a friend and look forward to working with her being confirmed for this appointment by my fellow senators. And just let me say, I represent part of the coast. If any of you know Chairman Hunter, we have conference calls often, as the commissioner will know. And Senator Hinojosa is on those calls, Senator Zaffarini is on those calls, as well as other state representatives, and she handles it beautifully and is always concerned. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Senator Colcourse. And with that, Cassie, we'll ask you to sit down and wait. Thank you so much, Senator Colcourse. We know that you've got other committees to go to, but thank you for coming in to introduce Ms. Brown. Let's see. I'm taking some things out of order. I see, is Courtney Yaltman here? Did I see her walk in? Yes. So we've asked Courtney, we've pulled her out of an ERCOT board meeting that you were in. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. So with that, Senator Eckhart, I'm going to move some things around and ask that Senator Eckhart, if you would like to go ahead and introduce Ms. Courtney Yaltman. And Courtney, if you we will go ahead and actually start testimony. We're starting testimony? Yes. For you, because I know you've got to go. So if you want to go ahead and have a seat, and Senator Eckhart, if you'd like to introduce Ms.
Welcome,
Yaltman.
Ms. Yaltman. It's great to see you again. Let me just get my papers in order. There we go. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce Courtney Yaltman, who is Governor Abbott's Office of Public Utilities Council nominee. I've known Courtney for some years now, having seen the legacy of service in her family. Her father, Bob Moore, was a valued colleague in local government when I was with Travis County. Ms. Yaltman earned her Bachelor's of Science and Bachelor of Arts from the University of Texas at Austin and her Juris Doctorate from South Texas College of Law. Ms. Yaltman is also a graduate of the Governor's Executive Development Program at the University of Texas J School of Public Affairs, and she currently serves as a mentor at her church in Austin and has been a member of the Junior League since 2007. Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Yaltman.
Thank you. Thank you. So members, we will go ahead and I'll start with just a question. I know you've only been at the OPUC for just a brief period of time, but what are some goals you would like to implement? I know you've worked in the governor's office, been around. Are there goals you've identified that you would like to implement for the Council of OPUC?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Senators. I think one of the main items I've already identified would be that of our communication, not just with you, the members, which is very important, but we are the consumer advocate. The consumers need to know who we are and that we're there. So we need to work on our website, work on the word of mouth, that they know that we're there to be their advocates, ask us questions. They need help. We'll be there to answer those.
And I think in a rush to hurry up and get you back to the ERCOT board, which is just very important for us all. I forgot to really give you the opportunity for any opening statement.
That's okay, but I can. You did. That's fine. Sure, I'll give a little brief overview. I was honored to be appointed by the governor in December of 2022 and then reappointed already in February of 2023. As Senator Eckhart mentioned, I was born and raised here in Austin, attended the University of Texas, and later went to Houston for law school at South Texas College of Law. It was while attending the University of Texas that I really began working here in the Capitol, and that's in no small part to my parents for their encouragement and support and instilling in me a public service aspect. While my father is not able to be here today, my mother is in the back, as is my husband Lars, who is my rock, my support, pushes me to take those challenges. So I'm thankful for them to be here today to support me. As I said, my parents did instill that public service push. They raised my sister and I to be very different but strong women, and to use that public service in our career paths. My sister as a pastor, myself as an attorney here in this building. And it's in the new role as chief executive and public counsel that I use that public service. I will be representing your constituents. As we worked together previously in my role before, I hope you saw my commitment, not just to you, but that you were coming asking for help in how you talk to your constituents, what you said, the messaging, or just to get something done for them. And I will take that forward and use that role to advocate for them to the fullest of my ability. So with that.
Thank you very much. One other comment, or I'd like you to comment on, would be anything that from the Sunset Report.
Yes.
Just, would you comment on that?
Of course, we are going through Sunset. They identified a few different items, all kind of doing with the contractual needs of our office. We use a good amount of expert witnesses for expertise in the complex utility cases that we do. So in that process, they asked us to use a conflict of interest form, which we had not been doing prior to my entrance into the role, and we've already implemented that. We ask all of our witnesses and expert testimony individuals to sign a conflict of interest and acknowledge that they have none of that as a problem. We've also implemented items of, once we are done with the case, making sure that we evaluate our witnesses and give that feedback of, do we want to use them again? And then finally, one of the items they noted was our niche industry limits our ability to be able to find people that are the best and the experts, but they want us to go ahead and put that RFP out there and ask and see if there are any others that we might not know about. So we've already started that process. We'll work through the comptroller's office to post and find hopefully some other individuals that might be able to help us out.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Members,
ma'am.
are there any questions for Ms. Yaltman? Well, you did your work beforehand without any questions. We do all know the importance of the OPUC. It is, as you said earlier, it's an important watchdog to protect the people of Texas. So it's a tremendous job, but I think you're up to the task. Thank you so much, and head back to your board.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
Chair now. Let's see. At this time, the chair would like to call Secretary Nelson to come forward and have a seat at the table. Welcome, Secretary Nelson. I've known you since I've been here. You were a great role model, and not just to me because being of the same party, but I found that you shared your knowledge and advice with all of us. And with that, I'm glad that you're sitting in front of us. And if you would like to spend a couple of 2 minutes with an opening sentence, we'll go from there. Statement, we'll go from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members. For the record, I am Jane Nelson, nominee for Texas Secretary of State. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am honored that Governor Abbott has asked me to assume the critical role of Texas Secretary of State. Following in the footsteps of the great Stephen F. Austin, the very first Texas Secretary of State, is a daunting challenge, and one that I believe my experience and skills have prepared me to take on. After just 2 months on the job, I have learned more about the workings of this agency than I did in my 30 years in the Texas Senate. With more than 200 employees, the Secretary of State's office is an essential but often overlooked corner of our state government. We make sure that eligible Texas voters have the resources that they need to get registered to vote and cast their ballots. We work with all 254 county elected officials, as well as thousands of municipalities, school districts, and other local entities to make sure that the election laws that you pass in the legislature are followed. We make sure that Texas businesses can file the necessary paperwork that they need to get up and running. We process more than 12 million business-related transactions every year. We commission 500,000 notaries public every year, and we are responsible for maintaining strong working relationships with our largest trade partner, Mexico. We additionally maintain strong relationships with all of our international partners across the globe whose businesses are expanding here in the Lone Star State. I cannot think of another state agency who has such a diverse and important portfolio of official duties. And I'm honored to be at the helm of this office at such an important time for our state and indeed our nation. And so, Madam Chair, I am happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Well, we all know that the Secretary of State is the Chief Elections Officer of the state of Texas, which is an important and very high-profile role. But that's not all the Secretary of State does. Would you discuss duties that you're now taking up in your new role?
Glad you asked me that because I couldn't possibly fit it all into 2 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And like I said in my introductory remarks, I served here for 30 years. And honestly, I had no idea that the Secretary of State had some of the responsibilities that I enumerated. Of course, we think of elections, and that clearly is the most important role of the Secretary of State. But there is an office that if you look out the south window, you can see over there the Rudders building houses the Secretary of State, most of the 200 and some employees that we have. And the business filings that take place over there, it is the repository for all business and governmental and commercial records. And they do a marvelous job, by the way. The second day, I'm embarrassed to tell you, and I served as finance chairman for 8 years. And I'm embarrassed to tell you that I sat down, of course, what did I do? The second day I was in office, sat down and looked over the books. And, I want to see how it works. I'm turning around looking at my staff. I walked over there and walked from the top of the building to the bottom, shook every hand, asked everybody what their job was, what they did. They do a really good job over there. But it's a very important job. I have to tell you, things didn't slow down at all, even during the pandemic. Texas is blowing and going, thank goodness. We're doing a great job. But the business filings, because our businesses are doing quite well, thank you very much, we have a lot of business to take care of over there, and we're processing all the business documents, all the government documents. I'm going to go faster on my answer to your question. We also, the Texas Register, we all know what the Texas Register is, perhaps with the exception of some freshmen. But the Texas Register is the responsibility of the Secretary of State's office. The notaries, you heard in my comments, but there are 500,000 notaries in this state, and we commission all the notaries. The state seal. The Secretary of State is the keeper of the state seal, which I think is a very cool responsibility. But we license and we actually are the keeper of that seal, and I can expand on that in a little bit if anybody has any questions on that. We witness the governor's signature. But we also have some unofficial duties that are so important, and that I mentioned one of them briefly, but we serve as the governor's liaison to Mexico and the border regions. And we also, and I have to tell you, it is such an important duty right now, and that is we serve as Texas's chief international protocol officer. We maintain all diplomatic and business relationships with international partners. And my senators, in just the 2 months I've been in office, you can't imagine the dignitaries who've asked to have meetings. Governor Abbott is so busy, and he has asked me as the acting Secretary of State to take some of the overflow guests who have come. And it is incredibly important that as Texas does well in business, that we extend a hand to these visiting. I met last week with the ambassador to Thailand. Came in the Secretary of State's office, wanted to know, what they can do to increase business relationships with Texas. Well, come on, and I owned a business for 40 years. I can talk about that. We've had dignitaries from so many countries in our office, UK, oh gosh, I shouldn't have started naming them, because we had Israel in, we had Armenia in, we had Canada in, we had lots and lots of countries have come to the office to visit. And that's a very, very important part of what the Secretary of State does. One thing I think we can do better, quite honestly, is involve senators, legislators in that. We're right here in this building. I think we need to do a better job of reaching out. And, I asked, what are we doing? I didn't even know that we had so many visiting. We need to do a better job of involving the legislature and making sure that,
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
I could go on for 3 hours, Madam Chair, and talk about
I
that.
believe you could.
Sorry.
Members, questions? Senator Miles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I've got 5 questions for Secretary Nelson. I'll try not to be long.
Okay, thank you.
But I represent Harris County.
All right.
Okay. Secretary Nelson, I want to say thank you for the 16 years that I've served and served along with you. You've always been a queen, and you've always been strong, direct, but always fair.
Thank you.
And I look forward to serving with you. I look forward to having you as the Secretary of State of the state of Texas. You and I have had our personal conversation in my office, and that we just were both excited about. But I'm going to have to do my duties right here.
Go ahead.
I've got a few questions that I've got to ask you, but you always know that I love you. Okay?
Well, and I
Harris-
hope those questions do still reflect that.
I'm sure
And
they will.
I hope
I'm sure
those
they will.
questions do still
I'm just
reflect that.
doing my job for my people back home.
Instead of me
that's all.
figuring out how
Madam
to
Chair.
get this out.
Madam Secretary, we all know the fiasco we had in the November elections of 2022 in Harris County. And there are several lawsuits, a slew of lawsuits that's been filed for Harris County to overturn certified results from the November 2022 election and force the county to hold new elections, Madam Chair. That's why it's important to me that I ask this question. Madam Secretary, do you see the state's your office having any role in these election lawsuits?
No, we're not the state's lawyer.
Okay. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good answer.
What do you believe is the threshold for throwing out election results and holding any new elections? Do you have any position on that this early in your?
Again, we're not the state's lawyer.
Okay. All right. So you don't have a position on that at all at this point?
I'm not the state's attorney. No.
I agree. I agree with you 100% on that answer. Your predecessor identified 11,000 votes, registered voters in 2021 as potential non-U.S. citizens using data from the Texas Department of Public Safety. You recall when we had that fiasco in 2021?
I remember the hearing, yes.
Okay.
I do remember.
However,
that,
it turned out that many of those voters filled out voter registration forms at their naturalization ceremonies, and DPS records had not been updated, which is a problem on our side. what can you do in your, what do you see your office being able to do to improve the process so that local elected officials and eligible citizens do not have to spend time proving their eligibility to vote once they have registered to vote?
Senator, when I first was asked to assume this role, and I went into the office and sat down with staff, one of the discussions that we had was and it was a general discussion, what we could do to improve. I talked to them about my goals as the incoming Secretary of State. And my goals are quite simple, and that is to have the most transparent, fair, accurate elections that we can have. Transparency being of utmost importance. And there's some sub-goals there too. I think young people are so discouraged and frustrated, and we need to get them back. They're staying home, and I think they're going to come back when we prove to them that we are being transparent. And so I want to look forward, and I want to look at what we can do to make that happen. And part of that is going to be making sure that we put into place, and I think I'm going to do everything I can to put into place safeguards. And I looked at, and I'm studying, I haven't been in too long, I'm studying how things happened, what mistakes were made, and how we can improve the processes going forward that will keep those kind of mistakes from being repeated. And I'll continue to do that.
And you know what, Secretary Nelson, I truly believe, and like I told you in my office, I look forward to working right alongside you to make that happen. This is a good segue into my next question. Texas had its worst turnout since 2014, with only 8 million of the 18 million registered voters casting ballots.
So sad.
So it's easy and safe for me to say that you're going to work, your office is intending on working, and you feel like it's part of your job to get people to the polls as well.
It is absolutely one of my strongest desires that we encourage people. I will do whatever I can. It's so sad. And it's not political as in partisan. It's so sad that our people on both sides, and I will do whatever I can as Secretary of State. And I think we got to get to our young people. We have to teach them that it's their responsibility to go vote. It's the most cherished right that we have, our right to vote. There are a lot of countries that are, doing a whole lot to have that right. And we need to teach I'm I'm a former teacher, I'm not old. But we need to teach our young people why that's such an important right. And then we need to make sure that our voters are not discouraged, that they're encouraged. And whatever I can do, if you all choose to confirm me, to work hard to make it where our people aren't on both sides of the political spectrum. It shouldn't be hard. People shouldn't be discouraged. I want them to be encouraged.
Thank you.
Next
question, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'm happy to hear you say the word young folks. Campus voting has been an ongoing issue in the state, with some counties removing voting locations on college campuses. We now have federal representation saying that we should be removing voting from college campuses or in any type of educational institution. In fact, there's been a bill filed to ban counties from putting polling locations on college campuses right here in Texas. Do you have any issues with voting locations being put on campuses in our state after you just mentioned that one of your target bases should be our young folk?
Senator, that would be a legislative decision.
Madam Secretary, will you speak into the
I will,
microphone?
and part of this is this CEDAR stuff that y'all need to do something about as legislators.
We won't fix that.
that would be a legislative decision, and something I learned as a legislator is I didn't want people telling me what to do when I was a legislator. So that would be a legislative decision y'all would have to make as legislators. So I'm sure not going to tell you if I have an opinion or not. I will, maybe. I can't even say if I'd say it privately. I know better.
Well, Madam Chair, you haven't too long not been a legislator. So.
That's right, and I know better because it hadn't been too long.
Can you see your office supporting the continuance of supporting elections on college campuses?
I can see my office not supporting or not supporting legislation.
Not supporting?
I can't see them being for or against any legislation. The responsibility of the Office of the Secretary of State is not to get involved in legislation one way or the other. That is not our job. And I would have the head of any staff member that got involved in legislation. They should know better.
I'm going to let you get by on that one. But as I said earlier in my office, I look forward to working with your office. I'm excited about you being Secretary of State of Texas. I'm looking forward to our future. And I feel in better hands now with you at the helm than I felt in the last 16 years.
Thank you, Senator. And I will say this with all honesty. You know, I was teasing earlier, but my office stands to be a resource to any legislator of any party that needs our assistance to be a resource. We will be a resource, but it's very important that we not get involved in legislation. One way or the other. I think it's very important. But we will be a resource to anybody who wants to have answers.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I will say, I'll just close with this. If we look forward to getting our youthful people involved, we have to go where they are.
That's one of my top goals, Senator.
Thank you.
One of my top goals.
Senator Alvarado. And let the clerk show that Senator Alvarado is present, please.
Thank you. Good morning,
Good
Madam
morning,
Secretary.
Senator.
I'm so used to calling you Chairwoman.
I'll answer to anything at this point.
I was thrilled to hear about your nomination and looking forward to supporting you. And we've had some conversations about issues that I'm very passionate about, like online voter registration.
Yes.
We know that's a legislative matter. So let me ask you about a few things that you would be able to weigh in. After we enacted Senate Bill 1, which many of us talked a lot about last session, there was a lot of confusion about when you send it back, putting your Social Security number, your ID number, and it led to a staggering increase of mail ballot rejections. In the March 22 primary, the statewide ballot rejection rate was 12 times higher than in 2020 presidential election, with voters of color having their ballots rejected at a disproportionately higher rate. And even after many of those cases were mitigated, it was still 3 times higher than in 2020, with almost 10,000 voters being disenfranchised. Now, wherever we were, D's, R's on Senate Bill 1, I think we can agree that that's a lot of voters, 10,000 voters that had their ballots rejected even after the mitigation. So I wanted to know if your office would be considered in any of the following: using evidence-based design best practices for vote-by-mail applications, mail ballots, and carrier envelopes to reduce voter confusion. Design changes could include increasing the font size. Many of us who have to wear these probably would appreciate that. Left aligning text and reducing language complexity. Publishing comprehensive voter education materials that provide clear instructions and completing mail ballots. There are others, and I can send those to you. But if you want to just comment on that, because I do have one more question.
I think we should consider anything that will improve. I think the more we should always be looking at possible improvements. I love the idea of making font size bigger. I'm complaining about that all the time. And I will say this, Senator, if I might, we talked about this too in your office, but the number with a voter education program that when I talked to my office about this, they told me that there was an extensive voter education program that they went around the state and implemented, and that number was decreased from 12% to I think 2.7%. So it was improved after a voter education program, but I think we need to keep looking at it, and I think we need to look at things like, if a simple increase in font would help, great, let's do it. We should always be looking at improving
And
things.
I'm glad to hear that. I think even 10,000, that's a lot. That number's too high, and even if it's 2 or 3%, that's
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, let's talk about election officials. So according to data from Secretary of State's office, nearly a third of Texas election officials have quit or retired since 2020. In Gillespie and Hood counties, election administrators resigned from office after facing threats and harassment from members of the public. And as a result of these issues, counties have incurred costs by having to hire and train new election workers. What proactive measures would you use to improve employee retention?
I don't know. I hate to hear that. I hate to hear that. And I don't know. I mean, I would welcome any suggestions, and
And in that too, how would you protect election workers from threats? And this is something that's been building over the last several election cycles, and that's why many of us stood strongly on the issue of the poll watchers and the environment, the negative and threatening environment that it can create.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be open to hearing, we can talk about that later, but I wanted to put it on your radar that this is happening. It's a serious problem when we may not have enough election workers come election time.
Yeah, and that's a sad reflection on our society today. And I would say, I would welcome any suggestions anybody would have. And I don't think that's unique to either party either, though.
Right.
So, yeah, any suggestions, I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado. I think you both brought up great points. Members of the question? Senator Springer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Secretary, it's good to see you here. I guess, we talked about at our meeting, and I appreciate what you said and your answer to Senator Miles on executing legislation. And what we pass is what you're doing and versus, writing the policy there. And I appreciate all the answers you had on the elections and your commitment to fair and accurate elections. One of the things that we also discussed, and those tend to get all the attention, especially here recently, and you touched on it, the border and the Mexican affair component of it. When I was chair of Ag and Livestock and working under Chairman King in the House, we actually went down to the Parr Bridge and looked at some of the, because everybody has this perception of what, per news source, what takes place on the border, but they miss the fact that Laredo is the largest port in the United States, both water and inland. And when I look at the agriculture that comes across that feeds Americans, and you can sit there and see that if we have bad delays and these kind of things, that it costs 15, 20%, 30% loss of product.
Yes.
If it's doing that, then it raises up the food prices, and then it's part of the inflationary problems we see here.
Absolutely.
So, you may have already looked into that, but I'd love to sort of hear, that component of what we see from the border affairs side of things.
Another thing I didn't realize until I was into this is that I serve as the chair of the Border Trade Advisory Committee. Which, oh my gosh, we had our first meeting. They meet quarterly, and it was an amazing group. Senator LaMantia, we had a good discussion about this. Their purpose is to exchange information between TxDOT and the governor's office and private and public sector stakeholders representing border trade industries. We had our first meeting here in Austin when that ice storm hit a month or so ago. And yet there were 60-some people that actually showed up, many from Mexico. Canada came down for this because Canada is a partner too. The trucking industry was there, many businesses. And of course, exactly what you were talking about is an issue they're very concerned about, because if there are goods in Mexico, a lot of the produce that comes up into our grocery stores could be sitting at a port that's clogged trying to get here, and it spoils, and our grocery stores up in the Metroplex are waiting for those goods, and if they can't get here, there's a huge loss monetarily. People up there are screaming because they can't get their produce. We have all kind of problems, and that's just one example of some of the problems that can happen. I had one of the members in my office this past week talking about a huge industry that is in Mexico that makes a manufacturer that has a plant in Red Oak in the Metroplex. They were a little concerned about the same kind of thing, only it's a manufacturing industry that had a supply chain concern if something happened there at the port, that they weren't able to get a supply into Red Oak that carries on into an aerospace industry, that they wanted to be assured that that supply chain was going to be there, the port open. And it's fascinating to have these discussions. We have so many goods going through those ports every single day that we need to keep open. That committee meets 4 times a year. Very important role for the Secretary of State. And our next meeting, by the way, we just set the date and location, will be in Laredo. We need to be having more of those meetings on the border. We shouldn't necessarily be having them all in Austin. But the trade between Texas and Mexico is $230 billion every year. We need to make sure that continues.
No, and I appreciate your commitment to that. I mean, obviously, like I said, elections gets a lot of attention, but the office serves an awful lot more in the business and commerce that takes place, between Texas and other countries. It is monumental, and I appreciate, been 6th session, the first time somebody says, and I know many more times that the German delegation has come here. Nobody's said, hey, you're from Munster, Texas, German heritage. My wife is 100% German, even though she's 6th generation Texan. Yeah. But to say, hey, would you help welcome them? Would you bring them and talk about the partnership that Munster has with Munster, Germany, and make them feel welcome? And so I appreciate you looking at everything in the office to make sure everything's addressed. So thank you. I look forward to this morning.
One other thing, if I might, Senator Springer, as we discontinued a lot of our manufacturing relationships with China, it blossomed relationships with other industry in both Canada and Mexico, to our north and our south. In your Senate district, which I'm very familiar with, you have a subcontractor in the aerospace industry that does quite well. And that industry became even more important because the supply chain issue with manufacturers in China cut off. So it's even more important right now because it's critical to the aerospace industry. So that discussion with the Board of Trade, we're not just talking produce, we're talking aerospace industry, became even more important. So,
thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Eckhart.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Secretary.
Yes, sounds good, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds so good. I deeply appreciate the role of the Secretary of State in terms of our relations and our context as a state internationally and nationally. And so, Senator Springer, thank you for those questions. I'm going to return to elections because it is a topic of deep concern. And we've discussed this before, that although elections in Texas have been conducted fairly and accurately for years, there have been some new laws passed as well as some new interpretations of existing law that have made elections more difficult for our election administrators and also more expensive for our local property taxpayers who bear the expense of these increasing requirements. So I'd like to raise one particular example. We've discussed a few, but a specific example, and I completely respect your response to Senator Miles with regard to the Secretary of State not involving itself in policy making. But this is a matter of policy implementation. The Attorney General Ken Paxton released an opinion in August of 2022 that reinterpreted a provision of the election code that had long been viewed as a responsibility of election administrators to safeguard voted ballots for a 22-month period and to not allow any kind of tampering with these safeguarded ballots. But in August of 2022, Paxton reinterpreted the provision, asserting that a member of the public could demand access to those safeguarded voted ballots. Your predecessor was extremely concerned about this opinion, stating handling of the voted ballots themselves opens up the possibility of accidental or intentional damage or misplacement that could call into question the election after the fact. We have heard from county election administrators that Paxton's opinion puts them in a double bind. Either they comply with his interpretation of the elections code, making themselves liable to a Class A misdemeanor with up to $4,000 fine and up to a year in jail if those records are tampered with by these individuals asking for access. Or if they don't provide access, they could also be liable for a Class A misdemeanor under the Freedom of Information Act. So they've got a double bind, and the Attorney General, in his opinion, seems to leave it in the Secretary of State's lap by stating, perhaps the obvious, that the Secretary of State has the authority to instruct elections administrators as to how to comply with both the ballot preservation requirements in Section 66.05(8) and the public access requirements in Section 1.012. So how will you allay the fears of elections administrators as they navigate these choppy waters where they could be prosecuted if they do, and they could be prosecuted if they don't?
Well, first, I'd advise them to talk to their county attorney, but I don't know that that would allay their fears. Yeah. I'm not sure I can advise you right now how I would allay their fears, but I can see how they would. My mother used to call that being caught between a rock and a hard place. Yeah. I mean, I would tell them that my office will continue to be there to provide guidance to them. And yeah, let me look at that opinion. I mean, I'll be there to listen and to, I tell them talk to their county attorney for one thing. I'm not sure that will allay their fears, and I can sure understand how they would feel like they're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Talk to their attorney. This is just my right off. My initial reaction is talk to their attorney, and I'll be there to listen, and my office will be there to provide guidance if we can.
Will you be updating guidelines for those county elections administrators so that they can have the benefit of the Secretary of State's opinion as to how to meet this obligation without opening themselves up to prosecution?
Well, we don't issue opinions as such, especially not opinions on the AG's opinion, if the AG issued an opinion. But I'm there to provide guidance, or our attorney's office is. But I need to read the opinion, in detail and see what it says. But I'm learning as I go.
Thanks so much. I look forward to working with you.
I'm there, and good for you for listening to him, because I get it. I get it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Senator Eckhart. Members, are there any other questions? Okay, with that, Madam Secretary, the Office of the Secretary of State is vital in many ways to the state.
Thank you.
And I can't think of anyone better suited to meet the challenges of the office, and there are some. We know that. But you represent our state well. You are well prepared to take on this office, I believe that. So thank you for visiting with us, and your fate does rest in this committee. So we look forward to making sure our Madam Secretary is supported in any way we can.
Madam Chair, members, thank you. Thank you again for the honor of being before this committee. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I am going to have to step out in just a few minutes, but at this time, the chair calls up Mr. Lawrence Long. Please come forward. Have a seat at the table. Please state your name for the record. And if you have any opening comments, 2 minutes, please. Okay. And then I'm going to step out, and Vice Chair Sparks, and I'll be right back. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
State your name for the record.
Yeah. Good morning, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Senate committee members. My name is Lawrence Brian Long, and I've been appointed by the governor to the Public Safety Commission. Let me start out by saying it's an honor and privilege to be before here. I admire what you guys do. You enact the laws, and then we help at the agency level. I've always gone by Larry, so if you see me out in the hallway, please feel free to call me Larry. I'm going to rush through this introduction here, and then I'll be happy to fill in gaps as necessary. I grew up in Dallas in the Oak Cliff region. Many of you know Oak Cliff and Dallas. Grew up in the Dallas Independent School District. Sports was a huge part of my life from the time I was 5 years old all the way through. Taught me to work with my teammates, be a good loser, a gracious winner. And the reason I mentioned sports at the outset is because it helped me get my education at a college level. I went to SMU on a baseball scholarship and majored in criminal justice there, studied business. I actually played on the last SMU baseball team that they had and was fortunate to be called by the late Cliff Gustafson down here at the University of Texas to come play in 1981, and I cherished that year. He was a great mentor at that age and a great coach and a lifelong friend, and got to visit his memorial, go to his memorial just a few weeks ago at Dish Falk Field. I found out while I was in college I better figure out what I was going to do for a living. I wasn't going to provide for my family playing baseball. So for the next 36 years, I was in the architectural aluminum business, and I worked for a company called Texas Wall Systems, and I started out as a project manager and eventually ended up as CEO and president of the company. We designed and manufactured products for all these beautiful glass buildings. First of all, we did business in Texas, the U.S., and then around the world. Worked with many different nationalities and people, different backgrounds. I've always felt comfortable in roles of no matter who I'm talking to. I've been on job sites with iron workers and electricians and glaziers, and I've sat in boardrooms with the CEOs trying to convince them to use our products. So it was a great business to be in. That company was acquired in 2006. I worked in corporate America for 5 years after that, and then as a consultant in the industry. And finally, after 40 years of marriage, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. 40 years this past year, we finally get to work together. We have a small financing company right now where we provide different types of financing to the commercial real estate industry. And so that's a quick run through of where I've been. I've served on 2 other commissions and just honored to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. You have served on the Finance Commission as well as the Texas Facilities Commission. What experiences do you bring from those prior board service to the Public Safety Commission?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. You know, when you start talking about money, the conversations can get serious pretty quick. So the Finance Commission and the facilities are both big agencies. The Finance Commission oversees the Department of Banking, the Department of Savings and Mortgage Lending, and the Office of the Consumer Credit Commissioner, the OCCC they call it. The Department of Banking is over $600 billion in assets. Savings and Loan is over $400 billion, so combined $1 trillion in assets. Big agency. There are 11 board members over there, 5 from industry, and 6 of us that were public members. So from the very start over there, I was interested in protecting the citizens of Texas and protecting the taxpayer dollars. So in a way, I kind of see the Department of Public Safety similar to the mission of the Finance Commission. We were protecting all things financial for the citizens of Texas on the Finance Commission, where the Department of Public Safety is literally protecting the safety of the citizens of Texas. Massive organizations. The Facilities Commission, I hit the ground running over there because of my construction background. I love the way they're set up. They have construction work groups for the commissioners over there. So not only do you get to go to the commission meetings and vote on various things and handle different agenda items there, we would come in a day before and spend hours in these construction work groups, and that's really what I enjoy is we, rolling up your sleeves, and we got to talk with, the contractors. I hope you've had a chance to walk through the Barbara Jordan building and the George H.W. Bush building over there. New, bright, airy, modern buildings for the state employees to go into. The mall is 98% complete from the Capitol to Martin Luther King Boulevard. So the takeaways on those were working for the citizens of Texas and just learning more about from the private sector, of learning more how state government is operated on a state level.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Well, I think you've met with senators, and
I have.
Hopefully all their questions have been answered. How do you understand your role as serving as commissioner for Public Safety Commission?
Well,
I know it's different than facilities, and just a brief statement.
Okay, it encompasses everything. The way I understand the statute is the Public Safety Commission controls the Department of Public Safety. Okay. So it's going to encompass everything in an oversight. And just from an outsider, I'm an outsider right now looking in. I think it's an excellent department, but I would hope in my time as commissioner there, no matter how long it is, that each year that they would get better and better and better. I think I can bring integrity and reliability, and I will take the job very seriously, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, you most certainly are there for the benefit of the citizens of Texas, and we have no doubt that you will serve well. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will get back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senate Committee.
Thank you. The chair now calls Commissioner Cassie Brown. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Chair
You've
Campbell.
had your introduction. We'd like for you to state your name for the record and 2 minutes for opening statements.
Great. Good morning, Chair Campbell, Vice Chair Sparks, and members of the committee. My name is Cassie Brown, and I
And
serve...
you might speak just a little louder into the mic, please.
My name is Cassie Brown, and I serve as Commissioner of Insurance. Thank you for inviting me before the committee today. It is a privilege to serve the state of Texas, and I take seriously my duties assigned to me by the Texas Legislature. My experience in insurance regulation, both from the agency and policy perspective, makes me uniquely suited for this position. Prior to my current appointment, I served as Commissioner of Workers' Compensation, having been appointed to that role by Governor Abbott in 2018, reappointed in 2019 and 2021. During my time at the Division of Workers' Compensation, we cut customer service hotline hold times to 30 seconds. We made it easier for system participants to share documents electronically and more securely. We continued to reduce medical costs, and we increased the number of injured employees returning to work. I will continue that same focus on customer service and effective use of state resources at TDI. Before my appointment of Commissioner's Workers' Compensation, I served as Deputy Commissioner for the Regulatory Policy Division within TDI for 7 years. In that role, I oversaw the products and rates that were sold on the Texas insurance market. I am also very familiar with the role of the Texas legislature and the legislative process due to my time as policy advisor for Governor Perry. At TDI, one of my primary focus is customer service and education. We strive to provide excellent customer service in everything we do. Consumers should be able to count on TDI for assistance and information in explaining their options when they don't agree with an insurer's decision. As Commissioner of Insurance, I commit to you to work within my statutory authority, implement the legislature's vision, and maintain open lines of communication with you. Thank you for my consideration of my nomination, and it's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. You spoke to your goals and priorities for the agency. Can you give us like an overall update, or what does the state of the insurance market look like in Texas?
So you know the saying in Texas, everything is bigger in Texas, and that includes our insurance market. Currently, we are the second largest insurance market in the United States. We are the seventh largest globally. What that translates to is $212.4 billion in premiums in 2021. We license over 3,400 insurance companies. We also license over 850,000 agent and adjusters. I would say that Texas remains a very stable, desirable, and healthy market.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there any questions? Senator Alvarado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Since you have been nominated, there have been a lot of damaging storms. Have you seen an uptick in cases, and is the agency prepared and able to accommodate those?
So we have seen, it seems like every single storm that comes along is the most damaging storm. Texas just recently had tornadoes in southeast Texas, and then we had the freeze in central Texas. What TDI does in those instances is we deploy our resources to the affected areas, and we staff those community centers where consumers can come in and ask questions. A lot of these consumers have never filed an insurance claim before, right? And insurance, it touches the lives of everyone. And typically, when you're having to deal with an insurance claim, it's because you've had a life event, whether it be health insurance, property damage, or an auto collision. So we stand ready to help consumers understand what their policy means and what they can do if they don't agree with an insurer's decision. We don't oversee cases per se.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado. Members, anything more for Commissioner Cassie Brown? Well, you've given a lot of your time for public service, and we appreciate that. That career spent will only be of value for us in your new role as in the Department of Insurance. So thank you for coming before us today. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
The chair now calls, okay, so I'm ready for him. The chair now calls up Director George Kanata to come forward. Please have a seat at the table. Please state your name for the record And 2 minutes for opening comments, sir. Let's see. Yeah, he was already introduced. He's already. Right. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members. My name is George Kanata, and I have been appointed as the Director of the Office of Community-Based Care Transition. And it is an honor today to testify before you. The Office of Community-Based Care Transition was developed in the last legislative session to provide a transition along with the Department of Family and Protective Services for our child welfare system to move to a community-based model. We're currently in 4 areas of the state, and we are kicking off 2 more areas this week. I feel very strongly about this model because I know that our Texas communities will do what they need to do for members of their communities, and I believe shifting the work under the state oversight to a community model where communities can take care of their own, where our private nonprofit partners can work with those communities to provide the care for children, youth, and families that are needed to restore hope and healing.
Well, this new committee came out of the need for our children staying in the offices, sleeping in the offices. So under DFPS, trying to make sure that we improve that situation. This role comes with some oversight. This role as oversight has its definite challenges. What are some goals? You talked a little bit about that, but what are really your goals to be met during your tenure?
My very first goal is to partner with the department to make sure that children are safe as we transition to this model. That is our absolute goal. My second goal is to make sure that we keep the momentum going in the rollout of this model across the state. As I indicated, we have 2 areas starting this week. We want to keep that going, but as we're doing that, my third goal is to make sure that we're engaging those communities that do not have that model yet implemented to make sure that we understand their needs and we make sure that we understand we're working hand in hand as we do our planning. And during all that, we want to make sure that the needs of children and families are met and that there is no disruption to their services.
Okay. Thank you for that. We most certainly look forward to this new office that we've established coming before the Health and Human Services Committee. Senator
So,
Miles.
Madam Chair, forgive my ignorance. This is the committee that came out of last session.
That was spawned.
That's
yes,
what this is?
The Office of Community-Based
I bet
Care.
everybody didn't know that. I'm sure I'm not the only one that didn't know
I
that.
think you're the only one.
I'm the only one? Okay. I'm going to let you have it. So this is the committee that came out. So tell me, I'm not very familiar, and we didn't spend any time together, and I'm not blaming you faulting you at all. But I'd like to spend some more time with you, because I'd like to know what it is specifically, how the legislation ended, and how we finished out with this, and what exactly it is that you're going to be doing so that my office can help you to help my constituents. So if you wouldn't mind, sir, I'd like for you to come by and spend some time so we can figure this out, so we can get the best use of this, Carol, down in our neighborhood, in our community. Because
Senator, I look forward.
One of my district is one of the most hit with foster care violations and foster care facilities violations, as I explained to our new director, our new secretary. So I look forward to working with you and look forward to it soon. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Miles. And I think, he's brought up a good point, making sure that senators that you haven't met with, start with those on the committee. But it doesn't matter which party, we're all concerned with making sure our children have great living support, guidance, and that they are protected. So it is wonderful to hear you say first goal is to protect our children. It's how do we arrive at that? How is that model really going to work? So we're entrusting you with that, and we'll be watching to see how it plays out. And again, you'll come under scrutiny or be asked questions out of Health and Human Services. But visiting with our senators to let them know more on a personal basis about the model will be very important.
Because Madam Chair,
Senator
we spend
Miles.
a lot of public money
We do.
trying to fix the foster care.
But not just money.
Resources.
We angst
Right.
over what we can do with the children. What's the best answer? I mean, challenges are there, but how do we rise above that? And that's a task that is very difficult. So with that, thank you, Senator Miles.
Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Eckhart, any questions? Senator Sparks, Vice Chair Sparks?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Whatever you think. Chair Sparks.
Yeah, Mr. Kanata, I appreciate you being here today. As you're aware, Region 9 was recently put out for contract, and there were no takers, i.e., no one was interested in trying to take on that responsibility. So one of the things that it highlights to me is that we've got, in this huge state, we've got a lot of different neighborhoods, and they function differently. Harris County from West Texas, Region 9. And so my encouragement to you really is we're going to have to be creative and look at all sides of this issue if we're going to truly get community-based foster care. And so I don't know if you'd like to say a few words about how you go about identifying those areas and addressing those idiosyncrasies, if you will, within those regions.
Senator, that is one of the responsibilities of the office is to go into communities, find out how communities define logical areas of help, and to make sure that as we're moving this model forward, that, as I stated in one of my goals, to make sure that we are meeting with those people who care deeply in those areas. As you and I discussed, that's something that is one of my top priorities, especially in areas of the state where we have not yet rolled out the model, or areas where we attempted to, but for whatever reason, it did not move forward. So that is one of my top priorities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sparks. Well, with that, you're a faithful public servant, and you've dedicated your career to helping children and families of our state. You've served in various roles, as was described by Chairman Hancock, and we thank you for your testimony and look forward to your direction for this new organization that we've started. Thank you.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now calls up the Commissioner of the Department of Family and Protective Services, Ms. Commissioner Stephanie Muth. Please come forward, Stephanie. It was great to have you in the office. It was wonderful to meet you and talk with you. Look forward to your role. The chair calls on Senator Eckhart to introduce Commissioner Muth.
It's my honor to introduce Ms. Muth, Governor Abbott's Department of Family Protective Service Commissioner nominee. And Ms. Muth, thank you very much for your courage in taking on this big task. Ms. Muth earned her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Florida and a Master's of Public Affairs from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. We overlapped a bit there. During her 20 years of government experience, Ms. Muth has held multiple senior executive level positions in Texas Health and Human Services departments, such as the Director of External Relations, Chief of Staff, Deputy over Social Services Eligibility, and Texas State Medicaid Director. Her accomplishments include modernizing the Texas eligibility system, building a network of community partners, and putting Medicaid clients first by strengthening managed care oversight. Previously, Ms. Muth served as the Texas representative for the American Public Human Services Association and as a board member of the National Association of Medicaid Directors. She is also an alumnus of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Medicaid Leadership Institute. Currently, Ms. Muth is an affiliate of the Texas Association of Health Plans. She also volunteers with Travis County CASA and the Junior League of Austin, and perhaps most importantly, we share the same hairdresser, and he says she's awesome.
Well, thank you, Senator Eckhart. I can't see similarities in hairdressers, so he or she must have quite the talent to work with both short hair and long.
It shows that Danny has a great diversity of talents with regards to our hair.
Very good. Now, that's a bond I've not heard of before, so that's terrific. Well, you've got over 20 years of experience with the Department of Family and Protective Services. So welcome.
Thank
If you'd
you.
like to give a couple of minutes for opening remarks, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
State
Thank
your name
you.
for the record, please.
Good morning, Chair Campbell, Vice Chair Sparks. My name is Stephanie Muth, and I'm the Commissioner at the Department of Family and Protective Services. First, I want to thank my Senator, Sarah Eckhart, for her support, and my hairstylist, Danny, for his many years of service as well. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank my husband, Chris Traylor, who's here today. Without his support and encouragement, I wouldn't be sitting here. It was truly an honor to be appointed by Governor Greg Abbott, and I'm privileged to be here with you today to ask for Senate confirmation. As you know, DFPS Commissioner is one of the most challenging jobs in state government. I was not expecting this appointment, but my decision to accept this challenge came down to the opportunity and the belief that I can really help this organization, that my experience to date has prepared me to lead the staff as we fulfill what I consider to be one of the most important missions in state government, protecting the unprotected. Senator Eckhart shared a little bit about my background and my experience, but as you can tell, I have led large organizations to success in my 2 decades of state experience, and mainly in health and human services, but I did start my career here at the legislature, so I have that going for me too. In my 2 months so far at DFPS, I feel like I've jumped into the deep end of the pool. I've retooled our exceptional items, established a solid plan for behavioral health services, signed contracts for 2 additional catchment areas for community-based care, and I'm also working closely with HHSC on a plan to modernize our rates for foster care. But most important is the time that I've spent with frontline staff. I've done a ride-along with workers. I've visited staff in local offices. I've visited one of our Child Watch locations for children without placement. Our frontline workers are the heart and soul of this agency, and spending time with them solidified my desire to do this job. I'm grateful for the opportunity to lead and support them, and proud and honored to ask for your support. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Well, you have, as you said, you've just been there a couple of months, but it sounds like you've hit the ground running. I think you'd really describe kind of what your first impression is of the agency. And I think for me, it's difficult to ask specific questions about it. It's just, you've been appointed to a position that of all the state agencies we have, being a doctor, being a nurse, I wouldn't take it. Because I think it's a challenge that takes a special person to truly accept, to rise above those challenges, to meet those challenges head on. And you've hit the ground running. I'm sure many of us will have questions in the future, and I appreciate you coming to my office. You answered a lot of them. I think, members, I think we all can agree that this is probably the toughest of all agencies. With that, I think I'll just leave members. Do you have any questions of Commissioner Muth?
There will be so many questions to come.
And Senator Eckhart makes a good point. You'll be up in front of Health and Human Services, be up, I'm sure again in finance, where we bring up a lot of questions. You'll be called by all of us. But your previous years of experience, I think you're aware that how that happens or how that goes. And I think you're up to the challenge. Your predecessor, I liked her a lot. She seemed to have, there were a lot of circumstances, and it just seems like those circumstances just continued to mount. I don't know what the answer is, but trying to get out in front of it, meeting with staff, as you said, head on. I think it's very important that you surround yourself with those that you can trust and those that have the children's needs first. Sometimes it's easy for staff. I'll say sometimes, I'm not. Staff, what we've seen is staff can wait chairs and commissioners out, wait them out. I think a very important role is when you've already said you've already started meeting with staff, but not just to have people surrounding you with wisdom and plans, but making sure those that are not effective are weeded out. Those that do not have the children's best interest at heart, weeded out. And that we don't just fill a vacancy, just to fill a vacancy, but it's to fill a child's broken heart. Members, no other questions? I think go ahead, Vice Chair.
I just want to say I appreciate you stepping up, bringing your experience to this office, because as it's already been established, it's going to be a very challenging, position. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Well, it's challenging. You have what it takes. I look forward to the committee supporting your nomination.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. The chair now calls up for the Texas Water Development Board, Director L'Oreal Stepney. Good morning, and we are still moving along nicely. Good morning. Please have a seat. And Senator Eckhart is recognized for entry. You just have the.
I have a
all
lot of
the
folks today.
recognition. Yes, you do. Picking a
Travis
lot out of
County is
Austin.
filled with awesome talent that the state is availing itself of. And I am honored to introduce Ms. L'Oreal Stepney, the Governor Abbott's Water Development Board nominee. We finally realized it does take a rocket scientist. So I'm introducing literally a rocket scientist. Ms. Stepney received a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering and a Master's of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. Ms. Stepney previously served as the Deputy Executive Director of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. She's worked for TCEQ since 1992, where she began in the Air Permitting Division for 8 years, then as Section Manager for the Wastewater Permitting Section, before being promoted to the Division Director in 2003 for the Water Quality Division. She also served as Deputy Director of the Office of Water upon its creation in 2009. Additionally, Ms. Stepney has participated in the multi-state talks with Mexico pursuant to the International Boundary and Water Commission about negotiations on water deliveries under the Rio Grande 1944 Treaty. She is a board member of the Mickey Leland Environmental Internship Program and is a graduate of the University of Texas Governor's Center Executive Management Program and the University of Texas Center for the Public Policy Dispute Resolution Fellows Program, and I too am a graduate of that dispute resolution program. Cannot say enough about the fact that it may take a rocket scientist to solve our water issues in Texas. So thank you so much, Ms. Stepney.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Senator Eckhart. Okay, now, if you will go ahead and, Director, state your name for the record. You've got quite an impressive introduction and history and educational background. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, senators. I'm L'Oreal Stepney for the record. I am deeply honored to have been appointed by Governor Abbott to serve as the third board member on the Texas Water Development Board, filling the engineering role. Governor Abbott appointed me on January 1st, 2023, and then reappointed February 3rd, 2023. Thank you, Senator Eckhart, for your kind introduction. I've just enjoyed the couple of conversations that we had, and thank you for your support of my nomination. So, Madam Chair, just if you don't mind, just a few words for the committee.
Please.
Senators, before I begin telling you a little bit about myself, I just want to express my deep appreciation to the staff of the Water Development Board. In the 7 weeks that I've been at the board, I can tell you that they have shown tremendous care for me and for the people of Texas. They come to work every day wanting to help the people of Texas, so I just appreciate that so much. Briefly about myself, I'm a native Texan. I grew up in the Dallas area in a household with a mom and dad that literally worked 7 days a week, sun up to sundown, to send 3 girls to college. And that has manifested itself. I can't believe it. It's a full circle moment for me. I'm working directly across the street from the University of Texas. I would also like to thank my mom and dad. My father was a veteran of the Korean War who isn't with us here today, and then my mother still is. So I would like to thank them for their investment in me. I would also like to express my appreciation to my husband who's here today, a retired long-time state employee, also a Navy veteran. I'm a proud mom of a senior in high school, an Eagle Scout who I couldn't break him away from school today. He needs to finish up. But I've spent my entire career in public service, and I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to continue to serve. Senator Eckhart did a great job explaining my experience, but I would just like to mention to the committee, I'm excited about being on the Water Development Board. It's a different part of the water world, and so I'm excited to take my experience I've learned from TCEQ and share it with the board members. The board has a big job. The water plant is $80 billion. It's a big job, and I'm looking forward to being a part of the conversation in that role, if so pleases the Senate. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Stepney. Thank your husband as a veteran from the Navy. We appreciate that. And it is truly nice to have come before us somebody with an educational preparation, not just experience, but you have education. And so many times for something that's so important, we don't have the education or the academics to back up the position for which they've been selected.
Thank you.
You come well prepared academically and with a lot of experience. I would like to ask if you can speak to the Water Development Board recently went under sunset scrutiny. Can you speak to, I don't know if you have it in front of you or you know, can you speak to some of the recommendations that Sunset had for the Water Development Board?
There were 3 recommendations that stand out for me. The first one is improving the efficiency of the processing of projects, to improve on delays in projects. And the Water Development Board, before I came on board, has taken a look at that. There's a few things that they have in the works, that we have in the works. First, developing a project management system so that projects can be tracked from beginning to end. You know, looking at each of the milestones and also making that information available to applicants so that they see the same things we see on our end. I think that's probably the biggest recommendation that will make the most impact for the Water Development Board. Also, outreach, having an outreach plan so that we can systematically go out and reach Texans. We want to make sure that Texans know of all of the resources, the science that's available at the Water Development Board, the planning resources, as well as the funding resources for all of our communities in Texas. So our staff are working on an outreach plan. And then there were some recommendations about different advisory committees associated with the board.
Thank you. And the commission had found the continuing need for the SWIFT Advisory Committee and recommended a series of other changes that aligns Texas Water Development Board, their statute with processes which fall into line of best practices.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I think it's important as a board member that, and coming from my experience with ensuring that projects move through a system effectively and that we do a quality review and that those are processed as efficiently as possible, because the longer it takes for projects to be approved, the more cost.
Yes.
The more delays, and so we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Thank you. Members, are there questions for Director Stepney? Well, water is always a difficult issue to navigate. She got it first. Senator Alvarado got it first. But I think you're well prepared to take up the task before us with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you so much for your support.
Yes. The chair now calls up to the Texas Water, Senator Eckhart, don't go far. The chair calls up for the Texas Water Development Board, Director George Payton. Please come forward. Have a seat at the table. And the chair will recognize Senator Eckhart to introduce Director Payton.
Thank you so much. Again, the tremendous talent coming out of Travis County. I'm here to introduce George Payton, Governor Abbott's Texas Water Development Board nominee, another rocket scientist on water. Mr. Payton earned his Bachelor of Science in Astrophysics and a Bachelor of Business Administration and Entrepreneurial Management from Texas Christian University. He also earned a Master's of Business Administration from Stanford. Mr. Payton is the president of River Valley Holdings Incorporated, an investment holdings company. He has a background in financial analysis and investment management, including direct investing experience in public equities, energy, real estate, and credit. Previously, he led financing and strategic decisions as the president of 2 oil and gas exploration companies and was the founder and former managing director of Fifth Well Investment Management, LLC. Mr. Payton began his career in the Finance and Capital Markets Department at XTO Energy Incorporated. Mr. Payton is currently a board member of the Salvation Army of Austin. He also volunteers with Friends of the Children Austin Trinity Episcopal School and is a member of the All Saints Presbyterian Church. And I'm deeply honored to have his bandwidth on this really important issue, particularly in light of his experience in the oil and gas industry, and as that is, many of those principles are being applied to the development of our groundwater resources.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, Senator Eckhart. Well, if you would, Director Payton, if you would like to introduce yourself or just state your name for the record and give you 2 minutes for comments.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Madam Chairwoman, Senators. For the record, my name is George Payton, and thank you, Senator Eckhart, for that kind introduction. I'd also like to thank Governor Abbott for the appointment to the Texas Water Development Board, an agency whose mission is no less than to provide a secure water future for all of Texans. As you all know, Texas is a land of opportunity. It's a beacon of economic freedom that's attracting people from all over the country and all over the world. In my 6 months since being appointed, I've had the pleasure of visiting many areas across the state, both rural and urban, and I can assure you that growth is occurring in all corners of our state. As the 9th largest economy in the world, Texas sees more than 1,200 people per day added to its population. And while those people bring their talents and their ambition and their capital, the one thing they do not bring is their water. Indeed, according to the state water plan, Texas population is projected to soar by 70% over the next 50 years, from 30 million people today to over 50 million people by 2070. And in that same time frame, our water supplies are projected to dwindle by 18%. So it's an enormous task in front of us to meet that gap. So today, Texas stands at a critical juncture wherein the confluence of population growth, changing weather patterns, aging infrastructure all combine to form a challenge of historical magnitude. Fortunately, the outstanding staff at the Texas Water Development Board stand prepared to help us and assist communities across the state with science, planning, and funding for their needs. And as a director filling the role at the Texas Water Development Board, I'm uniquely qualified with a background in financial modeling, finance, and investing to help us meet those needs. And under my leadership at the board, we will be accountable to our mission, communicative with our stakeholders, and judicious with our capital. Thank you very much for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Well, again, it's nice to have somebody with the academics to support the position that they're in. And I agree with Senator Eckhart, a lot of talents coming out of Travis County probably sucked it out of our other counties. But anyway, will you speak to the recommendations by Sunset for the Texas Water Development Board?
Absolutely. So I actually agree with Director Stepney, who was up before, that there were 3 that kind of stood out to me. One is the performance measurement system that we will be putting into place, right? Just tracking the things that need to be tracked
and measuring those so that we are able to improve upon them. That's one of the recommendations out of Sunset was identify performance measures and track them. Another one is a project management system that, again, will help us communicate with our external stakeholders so that they can monitor the progress of their applications within our agency and also help us communicate to them what's maybe missing. Right? The entire thing with our agency is making sure we are being efficient with taxpayer dollars. There's a tremendous amount of capital flowing through the agency. We want to make sure that we're getting projects in, we're getting them processed, and we're getting funding out to communities as you all have charged us with. And then the final one that stood out to me is around outreach. So being able to be proactive about reaching out to our communities, particularly our rural communities who may need more assistance with processing applications, understanding the engineering behind that so that they can get access to the right funds that we have. Because it's not always apparent or necessarily easy if you haven't gone through the process before.
Thank you. So the Sunset had recommended, and you both spoke to this, it says that it recommends improvements to increase the efficiency of the Texas Water Development Board's project review process, which you both spoke about, and prevent it from contributing to increased project delays and costs, as she pointed out. In addition to your role in funding water supply and wastewater projects, the Texas Water Development Board administers the state's water supply planning process to make sure there's adequate water for the future, as we already talked about, and to make this more robust. And that the Commission recommend changes such as authorizing regional planning groups to use a more severe planning baseline than just the state's worst drought, and requiring the Water Development Board to review the feasibility of certain projects in the state water plan, most certainly. They also determined that a more data-driven, which you both talked about, comprehensive effort toward developing and coordinating the board's outreach, so that's to the public, to meet the needs of future customers, and that the Commission found continuing the need for the SWIFT Advisory Committee, obviously, and recommended a series of other changes to align Texas Water Development Board's statute with process of best practices that's coming out from that. And you all do regulate, oversee SWIFT, SWIRF projects, trying to move water. Parts of Texas have water, parts of Texas don't. Part that don't want to get it from those who do, and those that do want to keep it. But we have to make a plan, and not just for the water we have now, but to look at brackish projects and how we can literally get more water.
Right.
Right? Members, are there any questions? No? Well, water's difficult. It's a limited resource. Your input will be critical, and we'll be watching. Thank you
ma'am.
very much, Director Payton.
Thanks so
for coming
much.
before
Appreciate
us.
it.
The chair now calls Commissioner of Workmen's Compensation, Jeffrey Nelson. Please come forward. And the chair recognizes, guess who? Senator Eckhart to introduce Commissioner Nelson.
It is my honor to introduce you all to Jeff Nelson. Please allow me to introduce Governor Abbott's nominee for Commissioner of Workers' Compensation. Sorry, I have so many here. I was just scanning the page to figure out where am I here. Mr. Nelson, a lifelong Texan, earned his Bachelor of Arts in Government from the University of Texas at Austin and has more than 15 years of public service experience. He previously served as senior campaign consultant for Congressman Kevin Brady, an executive aide to Governor Rick Perry, and as a legislative aide to State Senator Tommy Williams. Mr. Nelson began his service at the division in 2016. He has most recently served as the division's Director of External Relations for almost 7 years. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Nelson is also a board member of the Southern Association of Workers' Compensation Administrators. It's my deep honor to have him before us today, and also although he started out his career as a campaign dog, he's turned into quite the policy wonk over this last decade on workers' comp.
Thank you, Senator Eckhart. Well, Commissioner, if you would state your name for the record, and if you'd like to have some opening comments for 2 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Senator Eckhart. Good morning, Madam Chair Campbell and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jeff Nelson, and I am honored to be appointed as the Commissioner of Workers' Compensation. It's a privilege for me to be before this committee today, and it's a little bit surreal. I got my start in state service 17 years ago working as a Senate messenger while attending the University of Texas. My first job out of college was as an assistant sergeant at arms, and I would work in this committee, and I would stand right where he is today, listening to people like me testify. So this really is kind of a full circle moment for me. Senator Eckhart did lay out my experience in the Senate, working for Governor Perry, and then my past 7 years working in government relations for workers' comp and really learning to understand the issue. I say all that to let you know that I'm Senate trained and that I value the opportunity of being appointed to this position. I understand that I take seriously the duties that the legislature assigns to me, and I appreciate the faith that Governor Abbott has put in me to carry out these responsibilities. Now, fortunately for me, the legislature and previous commissioners like Commissioner Brown, who you heard from earlier, have made my job a lot easier. Thanks to major legislative reforms in 2005 and again in 2011, the workers' comp system is now held up as a model for other states, and that really was not always the case. Except for a small uptick due to COVID, the past 17 years, we have seen positive trends, including fewer injuries, lower medical costs, improved access to care, injured employees getting back to work more quickly, and fewer disputes. This has led to a 78% reduction in policy costs since 2003. So hopefully with the support of this committee, I will be able to continue working to improve the system. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Well, I guess what I would say, I may have missed it, but what are your goals for, and you've been there just since August of 22.
Yes.
How would you define your goals for the time?
So for right now, there's
been there a short period of time.
Yes.
But enough to get your feet wet.
Well, I've been here in this position for 6 months, but I've been with the agency for 7 years. So that's kind of allowed me to hit the ground running. We haven't had to press pause in some of the projects that we've been working on. A few of the things that I'm focused on right now, for starters, is to speed up our dispute resolution process.
I'm sorry, what?
Is to speed up our dispute resolution process.
Oh, yes.
That's one of our primary functions as an agency. So I'm looking at ways to maybe create a rocket docket for common disputes that we have, and also to maybe create a statewide docketing system to help more evenly spread out the caseload amongst our 19 field offices that we have. I also want to work to reach out to the healthcare provider community. We have a sufficient number of healthcare providers in our system, but I want to see just about ways on educating them on the benefits of accepting workers' comp insurance and what our system has to offer. I want to look at working with medical schools, some of the associations, then offering trainings, not just for healthcare providers, but for their front office staff to explain what the workers' comp system is and some of the nuances of it. Long-term, our big project is our legacy claims database system replacement. We bought our claims database system for $1 from the state of Washington in 1991. This has been the backbone of everything that we do. Getting out of that is a big priority. It's something that Commissioner Brown began a few years ago. It's an ongoing project. We're doing it in stages, but it's going to take a while. I mean, we have a penciled in completion date of 2027. My task is to make sure we have the resources and the people devoted to it to get it done in time.
Members, any questions? Has your agency had trouble hiring and retaining employees?
I've been in the finance hearings and the budget hearings, and yes, we have had trouble like all state agencies have, but we have found some creative ways to adapt to that.
Like what?
By creating some efficiencies through automation and some of the technology that we have, also putting work instructions and procedures in place for almost everything that we do. We've created a lot of efficiencies for ourselves, and we've been able to aggressively collapse positions. In the past 10 years, we've collapsed over 250 positions. Right now, we're at 407 FTEs, so that's a pretty significant portion of our staff. We have also, and so we've been able to put that directly back into salary to allow us to remain competitive. Most of our employees are right at the state average for their job classifications. We're also fortunate we have 19 field offices across the state. You know, we have offices in Weslaco, Lubbock, Beaumont, El Paso, all over. And it's traditionally those have been offices for our claims customer service and our dispute resolution staff. I've implemented a policy to use those offices for a more diverse group of employees. You know, we could have seen that remote work is possible. We do require our employees to come into work some. But so we are hiring attorneys, researchers, fraud investigators, workplace safety consultants, and housing them in those offices. And the fact of the matter is that $1 in Weslaco or El Paso or Beaumont goes farther than it does here in Austin.
Okay.
So that's been a big benefit for us.
Very good. Okay, well, as Commissioner of Workforce Commission for Injured Employees, what you do personally affects the lives of many Texans. So welcome, and we do look forward to your assistance and leadership at the Workmen's Comp. Thank you.
Thank you.
The chair now calls Mr. Dirk Johnson. Nominated as the Injured Employee Public Counsel. Have a seat. And the chair recognizes Senator Eckhart
Thanks again.
to introduce Mr. Johnson.
It is my honor to introduce Mr. Dirk Johnson, Governor Abbott's Injured Employee Public Counsel nominee. Of course, this is such an important position as distinct from the workers' comp commissioners. This position is specific to public counsel for those injured employees. Mr. Johnson earned his Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance from the University of Texas at Austin, as well as a Master of Business Administration and a Juris Doctorate from Texas Tech University. He has over 20 years of experience in public service, including serving as the General Counsel for the Texas Department of Insurance Division of Workers' Compensation from 2008 to 2015. And during that time, he also oversaw the Workers' Compensation Subsequent Injury Fund, the SIF. Later, Mr. Johnson served in the Department of Public Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General and as the OIG Chief Counsel for 3 years. So it is my deep honor to have Mr. Johnson's tremendous skill set in this position.
Mr. Johnson, if you would state your name for the record and take a couple of minutes to have opening statement.
Thank you, Senator Eckhart. Good morning, Madam Chairman and Senators. My name is Dirk Johnson. I'm here for the appointment to the Office of Injured Employee Counsel. Thank you, Madam Chairman and Senators, for the opportunity to testify. It is a blessing and a great honor to me. I would also like to thank the Governor and the entire appointments team for their trust and work with me. My wonderful wife, Kirsten, is here, and I would like to thank her really deeply for the support over all these years. It was a lot of really tough days and a lot of really late nights, and I don't know what I would have done without her support and help, and thank you for everything. Last year, I retired from the state with more than 20 years of experience. As was discussed, I was the General Counsel at the Division of Workers' Comp from 2008 to 2015. Those 7 years, it was right in the wake of the sweeping legislative reforms of 2005. So I was privileged to be among a group of people that really helped turn all that into rules and implement all those changes. And, you know, with a lot of hard work from a lot of different people, Texas went from being statistically one of the worst workers' comp states to one of the best. And that public service and what everybody did was just amazing. Prior to that, I was at the office, I was the Deputy Public Insurance Counsel, and that was right on the wake of Texas turning to a file and use insurance rate system, so I worked a lot with the Department of Insurance on those rate litigation issues. I also, workers' comp has a huge healthcare component. I have a broad background in healthcare. I was at the Department of Health and Human Services, as was discussed. I also worked at the Texas Medical Board, and I also did medical malpractice defense with the Office of Attorney General and in private practice. So that is my background. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming forward. We've heard about your background, which seems very strong, and your desire to serve. It sounds like it's equally strong, coming from the Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. You've seen a lot with that. What would you say your priorities are for the office?
Well, my number one priority, we were left in really good hands by our prior public counsel, Jessica Bartas. So my first priority is not to turn, it's not to ruin what all great work, but really my first priority is really to follow the law and follow the direction of the legislature and follow the statutory implementation to assist injured employees and advocate for them.
Yes.
The Texas workers' comp system is very strong, and it's part of one of the many pieces that make Texas such a force and such a job creator and such a wonderful place for companies to do business. And having worked there and seen it firsthand, you know, when people work together and people come together to try to solve problems, you can really do a lot of great things. And as a small piece of that with the Office of Injured Employee Counsel, it would be my goal to make sure we continue the great work that's been done in the workers' comp system.
Thank you.
Yes.
Members, questions? Senator Alvarado.
Thank you. And I'm glad to hear you say the word advocate, because this position was created for someone like yourself to be an advocate for workers as they deal with workers' compensation. With this environment, we have a situation where insurers and employers are represented virtually at every stage of the claim process by attorneys or at least by claims professionals, whereas it's a very different situation for workers. That places a heavy burden on your office. In fact, the statute, and I'm going to read from that, creating the office requires that the OIEC has demonstrated a strong commitment to and involvement in efforts to safeguard the rights of the working public. Can you talk a little bit about what in your background will help you achieve that, and what specifically you'll do to meet that particular mandate of the agency?
Thank you, Senator. And Commissioner Nelson, before me, talked about coming full circle, and this is sort of a full circle moment for me, too. When I was in law school, I law clerked at a firm that did workers' comp claims. So I started at the very, very beginning of my career meeting with injured employees and helping assist them through the workers' comp process and other matters. And I've seen firsthand what a difficult situation it can be for somebody when they're injured at work and can't go back to work. It's a truly life-changing event, and I believe that the Office of Injured Employee Counsel, under past leadership and under my leadership, can effectively assist those injured employees. It's a very important matter, and it's a huge part of our system.
Thank you. I'm glad you recognize that and bring that skill with you. Will you work with worker-centered organizations to ensure that injured employees are receiving the help that they need from the agency?
Senator, I will, of course, meet with and work with anybody that I can work with. I'm always open to hearing from people and talking to people and trying to do the best job I can do. I don't think you can do a good job at anything until you have all the information, and meeting with people and trying to address their concerns is a huge part of making the system better.
It's been brought to my attention that the number of workers who receive the tier benefits known as the lifetime income benefits has dwindled now to the point where there are very, very few workers who ever access these benefits. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to look into that, but if you have, do you have any recommendations as to how to improve the performance in the system?
Senator, I have not had a chance to look into that particular issue yet and those recent trends.
Speak into the mic a little bit more.
I'm sorry. Senator, I've not had a chance to look into that particular issue or those recent trends, but I'd be happy to look at it and meet with you.
Okay, I'd love to hear back from you on that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I think it's real important, not just that you're looking at cases or meeting folks, but that it gets moved through. There's not a backlog, a block, because this is affecting, obviously, people's lives. Don't have to tell you that. You come well prepared. Senator Eckhart, did you have a question?
Just to say that this is an important role to not only represent the individuals as they are navigating the process, but also to look at the overarching trends, just as Senator Alvarado pointed out with regard to lifetime benefits and other troubling trends that may indicate that injured workers are, in exchange for giving up their right to sue their employers, they truly are getting adequate compensation for injuries sustained at work. So I have full confidence in Mr. Johnson.
Well, I realize, members, no other questions? I realize you've not taken your seat yet, but we welcome support. You most certainly seem like you're well equipped for the job at hand. And it's very important. What you do in the office affects people at the breakfast table. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senators.
The chair now calls up Commissioner Alberto Trevino of the Texas Workforce Commission. Please come forward, have a seat at the table. You have sat very patiently while we've done all this. And the chair recognizes, hold on. It is not Senator Eckhart. It is our new senator, Senator Lamantia, to introduce Commissioner Alberto Trevino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm proud to introduce Commissioner Alberto Trevino from Harlingen, Texas. Commissioner Trevino was appointed to the Workforce Commission as the Commissioner representing labor in January and has recently been reappointed for a full term. Commissioner Trevino served a total of 33 years between law enforcement and Border Patrol, starting with the Harlingen Police Department and for 21 years with Border Patrol, where he served the Local 3307 of the National Border Patrol Council and served as the Council's Executive Vice President. He's also a third-degree Knight of the Knights of Columbus and has an associate degree in criminal justice. Because of his decades of experience in public service and his involvement in the community, Commissioner Trevino is highly respected both professionally and as a community leader. The Commissioner representing labor is tasked with representing the interests of over 14 million Texas workers. Commissioner Trevino is well equipped to handle this task. I have spoken with the Commissioner and have great respect for his service and character, and I'm honored to support his nomination to the Workforce Commission as the Commissioner representing labor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lamantia. Well, how would you leverage, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
How would you leverage your experience at the federal level with labor representation into your current appointment? But before I left off your 2 minutes that you get.
Okay, no, that's okay.
Your name, Mr. Trevino, or Commissioner Trevino. State your name for the record. Please take 2 minutes for opening remarks. And then the question that I'll re-ask.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair Campbell and members of the committee. I really appreciate you letting me be here today. For the record, my name is Alberto Trevino, and I am the Commissioner representing labor at the Texas Workforce Commission. Governor Abbott appointed me to the Texas Workforce Commission on January 9th, 2023. As a Commissioner representing labor, it's my responsibility to serve the working Texans, make sure that they are respected and treated fairly in the workplace. Prior to my appointment, as Senator Lamantia said, I was serving 33 years in law enforcement between my time at the Harlingen Police Department and then later as an agent with the U.S. Border Patrol. I also had the privilege of serving 21 years with Local 3307 of the National Border Patrol Council. And in that time, I was elected Executive Vice President and then later National Treasurer for the National Union. I believe my experience gives me great insight to serve the workers of Texas. My role as a Commissioner of Labor, I think, provides a vital voice to the Texas Workforce Commission and the Texas economy as well for the workforce. The Texas Workforce Commission has 3 pillars that they ensure that not only the labor, but the public and the employers' voices are heard. Texas has a strong unemployment rate of 3.9% and has shown 14 consecutive months of good growth in employment. As I mentioned, I've only had like 2 months with the agency, so I'm still learning a lot of everything that they do, and it is a great agency, and I very look forward to serving the workers of Texas in this role. Thank you again for having me here, and I'm prepared to take any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the question I was going to ask, just how would you leverage your experience at the federal level with labor representation into your current role? And you touched on it a bit, but.
Right. I think that experience that I've had on the federal level can easily transfer over here to the state level because it's still representing the interests of the employees or the workers, and I can bring that expertise here to the state of Texas.
Okay. Members' questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Eckhart.
Commissioner Trevino, it's lovely to see you again. And we had spoken in my office about some statistics, and I dug them up. So I wanted to ask you a question about them. The Texas Workforce Commission states that a majority of jobs in Texas, 54% of them, are considered middle skills jobs that require some post-secondary education and training, but not necessarily a 4-year degree. However, only 45% of Texans have this type of credentialing, meaning that about 1.4 million Texas workers are not equipped with the skills they need to access available good-paying jobs. How do you plan to work with labor to recruit and management to recruit, train, and upskill local talent to fill our skills gap in Texas?
That's a great question, Senator. I'm going to continue to work with the agency that on some of the plans that they have to make sure that the workforce stays strong. I don't know if I would consider even myself a middle skill because I don't have a full 4-year degree, but I've accomplished so much just by communicating and listening. So I think that with that, I'm going to make sure that I take all the recommendations I can as I'm learning this process and move forward in that direction.
There is a specific program with the Texas Workforce Commission. The TWC is charged with administering the Texas Education Code Chapter 133 funds for apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs in everything from healthcare to IT to skilled trades to manufacturing. And these funds are so important for apprenticeship programs in several industries where we're really seeing a dearth of skilled talent: nurses, computer engineers and programmers, plumbers and electricians. So will you help ensure that full consideration is given to providing funding, state funding, to the Department of Labor registered or certified programs for apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeships, which provide apprentices a portable, nationally recognized credential within their industry upon completion? I think it goes a long way to closing that skills gap.
Yes, I do agree, and I am an advocate of the apprenticeship programs that I've seen in my limited time there. So yes, I would do everything I can to make sure that they continue to succeed.
And some of our industries that are most versed in utilizing these apprenticeship programs are our skilled trades. Our plumbers, our electricians, those who work in insulation, carpentry. Do you plan to be sitting with them to find out how we can take their best practices and apply them to less traditional apprenticeships in nursing, computer technology, on-the-job upskilling for employees in these industries?
Well, I think I'm going to be able to meet with all the labor groups, not just the plumbers, and which they are a very vital part of Texas economy, but like you said, the teachers, nurses. My background with organized labor, I think I have a unique skill that I will be able to understand what they're talking about, because a lot of times they're doing that as a secondary part as opposed to their main profession. So when they take on the responsibility of helping out their fellow colleagues, that's a secondary part. So yes, I do want to meet with as many people as I can.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Chair recognizes Senator Alvarado.
Thank you. Mr. Trevino, thank you for the phone call we had. I thought it was very productive, and you share my passion with some of the issues Senator Eckhart mentioned on workforce and making sure that we have those skills ready to go for the next 10 years, 20 years, and so on. But I want to talk a little bit about your position as representing labor. Very important role. I know you've spent 21 years with the Local 3307, the National Border Patrol Council. Can you talk about your experience in that and how you see this designation of your role representing labor?
Right. I think my whole life, basically, I've been called to serve. From elementary school, being an altar server, then joining the police department and so on, also coaching Little League. So I think that aspect is ingrained in me. That's the way I was raised to serve. So I think I would use all that practical knowledge to serve the workforce of Texas to the best of my ability.
Well, I guess I was talking more about your position as with the Local 3307 and being the labor designated person, how you see your role that you had with your union and using some of those talents and skills as this designated position of labor.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood at first, but I apologize. I think I would use my skills is because when I was representing my fellow agents and civilian population that work for the Border Patrol, there's always two sides to every story. So a lot of times when somebody feels that they're getting maybe not heard correctly, I would listen not just to the employee, but I'd also have to see what side the employer was taking as well, if I'm answering your question correctly. So I understand that a lot of times if you meet in the middle, everybody wins because the job gets done. So I think I can bring that expertise to this position.
Okay. The pandemic highlighted the structural deficiencies and dire need for modernization of the outdated employee insurance benefit system. How will you support the efforts to address modernization and ensure that this is not repeated?
Okay. Well, before I even was thought of taking this position, I understood from the staff that they were, before this pandemic hit, they were already trying to make steps to improve and change the computer system that was happening. So it seemed like one step ahead of it, but I think when the pandemic hit, they had to pause it. So they're continuing to update that and change it, and I do support that 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado. Members, are there any other questions? Well, your presence today, Commissioner, is appreciated, and you're appreciated for accepting the role that's very important at the Texas Workforce Commission. But I think it sounds like you'll be a good fit, most certainly. With that, no other questions. Thank you so much for coming forward.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.
Members, we will now move to public testimony, for which we have none. We do have one person who is not here for oral testimony, but written testimony shows support for Courtney Yaltman. Unless there's any objection, that will be recorded in the committee. So hearing no objections with that. So is there anyone here, this is the last call, is there anybody who would like to offer any public testimony on, for, or against any nominees that were posted on the agenda today? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. Members, we will not be taking a vote on these nominees today. We'll do that as pending business, either before the committee at the desk or here. If there is no other business to come before the committee at this time, Senator or Vice Chair Sparks moves that the committee stand in recess.
Yes.
The committee stands in recess, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you.